So we're a design business located in Brunswick, Melbourne. This is our kind of motto, experiential objects that elicit joy and defy convention. We're a design studio of 10 at the moment. There's a few shots of our studio. We focus on furniture and lighting, and we produce all of the lighting in-house in our Brunswick studio. As I said, yeah, the practice is broken up in between furniture and lighting. All the furniture we do collaboratively with local manufacturers. So yeah, everything we can do is made in Australia. We do source some components, electrical components, LED modules from different locations around the world. For example, the light you see there is completely made in Australia. Besides the LED module, we source from Germany. All of that aluminium is machined in Melbourne, and the glass is mouth blown in Adelaide. So we do have quite a local focus with what we do. And the studio is predominantly industrial designers. Just trying to think, yeah, all except 2 people are industrial designers, and then another 2 people have an industrial design engineering background. They did a double degree. So a very design-focused studio. I thought I'd take you through a few of our products, which you can see now. This is our probably most popular lighting piece called the Ceto. It's a modular lighting solution. It kind of bridges that kind of decorative architectural area. We've got a number of different lighting pieces, and locally we sell our lighting direct, and then we have a distributor locally, as in Australia, called Stylecraft, and they sell our products nationally. They have showrooms in every state, and they also have a showroom in Singapore. And then internationally, we also sell direct internationally with all our products, but we have some key distributors. We've got a great distributor in Hong Kong. We've got another good distributor in LA and a couple in New York, and then a few in Europe as well. So that's part of the business where we're growing currently, looking to do more international sales and grow the business from an international perspective. So you can flick through pretty fast if you want on all of these images. There's quite a few different lighting pieces. We create internal briefs from a design perspective. So there's a material or a process that I'm interested in, and then we, as a studio, spend quite a bit of time creating a design brief, and that includes, roughly starts to circle things that we're interested in, if it's a material or a process, and that document goes into quite a bit of in-depth detail. We look at materials, look at processes, we look at existing products, look at existing product price points, where they're made, who they're made by. We look at sustainability, processes, and then typically I just let that document sit around in the studio for a month or so. And then once that's kind of been refined a little bit, then I'll pick it up and we'll start the design process. But all of those kind of that design brief is usually completely internally driven. And, from the sketch development, I'll typically do that just in notepads. And then from that, I'll bring in a designer from the studio and collaborate with them to develop the product. So all the designers in the studio have 1 or 2 products that they're consistently working on, which I'm working on them with in collaboration. We're flipping into some of the furniture at the moment. I think the lighting has quite a kind of decorative, elevated aesthetic, and the furniture, we're trying to replicate kind of what getting a better understanding of what our brand is, and how best to produce that in our products. As we've produced more products and we've been continuing working on the brand, understanding what the brand is and what type of things we want to be working on, what type of products we want to be producing, is becoming also paramount into the initial design brief. So once we've got the design brief, while I'm creating a new product, I suppose I'm really thinking about not only all the things in the design brief, but I'm also thinking about the brand and how that relates. So I suppose that's a little bit about an introduction to the business, and you can, this is into some specifications now, but you can get a little bit of an understanding of the breadth of products that we work on. And yeah, maybe now's a good time to just see if anyone's got any questions in relation to the brand as it is now, and then I'll delve back a few years.
Hello, I'm Mika.
Hey, Mika.
Do you use a particular color palette that you guys stick to for your products, or does that change depending on like what year you produce them or?
It's a good question. It's something that we spend ages, way too much time in the studio doing. And we typically, how it usually works is we typically explore new and exciting colors. And then I end up choosing something really muted at the end after we explore all the cool stuff. So the color palette is a little bit reflective of my taste. So we're quite, I suppose it's quite conservative and muted colors that I'm personally attracted to. I'm attracted to materials like grains and textures that are inherent with material, but when you're looking at particular color, I suppose I'm probably a little bit more conservative. But we select colors for product shoots. So once we go through the design process, I mentioned the brief, we do the brief and then we do design development, then we produce lots of prototypes, and then we produce production prototypes, and then we've got the finished product. And then we work to figure out our photo shoot, and we spend a lot of time on the photo shoot. I've got a photographer I've been working with for years, and we'll render up the whole scene of the photo shoot, what kind of build the photo shoot, how the product's going to sit in there. We'll render that up. We'll select the paint colors within that shoot, and then obviously we'll select all the materials within that shoot. So it is something we spend a lot of time on. It's not something that we change seasonally, but it definitely is more collection related.
Awesome, thank you.
No, thank you.
Hi, my name's Jasmine and I have a question to ask. I was wondering how you how do your employees get to you? So do they find you on LinkedIn, or is it networking, people you know, certain universities? How do these people come to you?
It's actually really hard to find people. So, we typically don't advertise in Seek anymore because we just get so many people that aren't right for the position. So we just actually usually put it on our website, and then we put a little notice on Instagram. So social media is typically how people have got in contact. I'm just thinking of some of the designers in the studio. A lot of the designers have been with me for about 7 years now, which is great. Got great retention in the business. And I think most of them have come out of university. I'm thinking Lockie, who handles our production now, and he's kind of head lighting designer. He, I think, applied for a workshop role when he finished RMIT Industrial Design. Well, he was still at university. He was assembling lights, and then when he graduated and had more time, he came on in a design position. Another few people were referred to. There's 2 people from Swinburne, and they were referred from Mark Stratton, who's a lecturer there, who I'd done some work with, and I think I reached out to him and asked if he had any recommendations for good designers. But I suppose my advice to you guys would be, stay on social media and engage with firms online that you're interested in working for. And also be more proactive as well. Reach out to people and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And just one more question. What do you look for in a person, like in terms of their skill set? So put aside like
Sure.
social skills and all that. Like is it more drawing, CAD?
Yeah, I suppose I'm not looking for. Yeah, it's a good question because putting aside the other stuff, but I probably wouldn't put that aside. So I would employ based on, and there's two things that are connected, like studio fit, like personality fit, and work ethic. They're my number one.
Yeah.
And then design, you know, we can teach that as well. Obviously, you've already been taught at university, but we can also teach skills in-house. So that aside, you know, what's really nice to have would be, yeah, good CAD skills, but also just design smarts, which isn't like something you can kind of put your finger on. It's like a way of, initially just a way of, you've got your own internal system of solving a problem and thinking about things. And then as, say, if you've been in the business for a couple of years, I really want to see people developing their own voice and having an opinion on design and having robust discussions about things. Like I'm obviously collaborating with other designers all the time, and I want to hear from them. I just don't want to, them to detail exactly what I draw or whatever. You know, there's got to be a relationship there and a growth.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah, that was great. Thanks.
No problem.
Just on that note, Ross, when you're talking about that, it's also it's process as well. Like how does a designer go through their design process? And so typically at uni, there's not much transparency as far as process is concerned or how you evaluate into that space. Quite often what graduates come out with is a finished portfolio and they go, hey, look at this piece, it's amazing. Yep. How do you go about evaluating process? How do you, and how have you in the past tried to look into that little crystal ball to go, I wonder whether you'd fit into the studio, or I wonder what your process is. Oh, that's really interesting. How did you get to that? So how do you go about doing that thing?
Yeah, it's really hard to do, as you say, from a folio. And I've had a lot of interviews where people have looked great on paper and then you meet them and you go, this isn't going to work out. So it's a bit boring, but I've got we've got a kind of formal interview process that we go through. And obviously the first bit of the interview process is just to get to know you. And the second bit are just some questions that I probably wouldn't normally bother asking people. But it's really beneficial to see how people answer questions and respond to, you know, they're kind of boring questions like, tell us about a problem you've had at work, tell us about a challenge and how you solved it, all that kind of stuff. But it's actually interesting to see how people articulate and respond to that. And I think being articulate in a meeting is important. And then understanding, I suppose that also allows a platform to kind of unpack some of those projects. So you can kind of look at this project and see what was the involvement of that person in that project. If they're not fresh out of university, you know, it might be, you know, a collaborative project they've obviously done from another employee. What was their real role in that project? So just, digging deep into that a little bit. But it's really hard to tell until, you know, someone's seated in the studio and you throw a design project at them and see how they respond to it.
Have you had anyone surprise you?
Yeah, people surprise me all the time, for sure. Yeah, I think it's good just to have lots of different takes on things, and you know, this idea of personality fit into the studio and work ethic, etc. I try not to be too closed as an ideal on that. Like, yeah, it's a tricky thing. Essentially, if someone's passionate about something and understands how to, you know, sit down and get into something, that's the first gateway. It's pretty easy to step through, but it's surprising how many people can't do that.
Hey, I've got a question. My name's Nelson.
Hey, Nelson.
About finding the target market for your products? Is it a new market for every product, or is it same in the whole company?
It's pretty much this. Well, it's a pretty similar market. We kind of found our market that appreciates our products. We work in the kind of commercial interiors and residential interiors. So we fit in that kind of contemporary furniture and lighting sector. We're probably in the higher end of that sector. And just trying to think, we're not typically focusing on new categories. It's pretty hard to find a new category. When I first launched the business, one of the lights there in that we flicked through before was called the Oak Light. And at the time, we released that in 2012, and that was a timber pendant. And that was one of the first timber pendants on the market at that time. It was pretty quick. After about a year and a half, there were timber markets all over the shop. Sorry, guys. That was kind of a new category, but it was still a category that we were looking to work in anyway. But that was an interesting one because we found a product type which was more like a material type more than a product type, which hadn't been on the market. So there was there was a real pull for that particular product.
All right, thank you.
Cool.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. So I have a question that how do you balance the aesthetics aspect of the product and functional aspect? Because for me, sometimes I tend to care too much about the aesthetics, so that I sometimes forgot the functionality of the product.
Yeah, it's a really tricky thing, and I continue to talk about this with design peers all the time. It comes down to a personal choice. So the balance of, putting functionality aside, I like to kind of think about design content. And when I say design content, that is if you can have a product like a chair and it's, completely form marries function and there's no kind of design to it. It's just as basic and utilitarian as possible. And then you step up from that and there's a concept in it. There's some, movement in the aesthetics and materials, and I call that design content. So how much design content does a product have? And, some designers, there's so much design content in a product. There's things going in every which way. And it's about finding a balance of what you personally like. I think function, probably to answer your question, just has to be there. You have to have function for it to be a successful product. It has to, for it to be a successful product in the market, it has to function well. It has to fit in a box. It has to be cost effective. It has to be durable. There's all these things it has to do. So just put that aside for this conversation and just look at design content, how much design content, the right amount for me kind of underpins my aesthetic. It's a little bit more minimal. And it depends, I suppose, what section of the market you're working in as well. But I think once you figure out your kind of design language and your design identity, it becomes something that I'm constantly still discussing and still thinking about. How much design content is enough for this product? Because I can take a product and dial it up and dial it down. And how you tune in that frequency of design content is going to depict who it's going to appeal to in the market and the volume it's going to sell. So I think it's a really interesting thing. I can't answer it exactly, but I suppose I can say that I'm constantly thinking about it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Maybe we should jump back now. If you go back to 2005 folio, sorry, I kind of dug around for some old work. So probably getting a bit embarrassing here. So I graduated in 2000 from industrial design at Monash University. And I took a year traveling overseas. And then I came back and applied for a few positions, and I got offered a job at a company called Neo Purple. So maybe just hold off on flicking through this yet. I don't think we're quite at this stage yet. This was just finished, fresh out of uni, and I was going around and obviously meeting a lot of companies. I don't think I particularly, like if I come into my studio, I would not have got a job. I don't think I was particularly good at interviews at that time. And I think my folio was a little left field. I got good grades at university though. When I did get offered a job, I got offered two jobs at the same time. One job was for a company called Neo Purple, which was at the time quite a well respected, kind of hardcore industrial design, product design firm. They were based in Richmond, and I knew a friend who was already working in there. And the other position was for a company called Anglian Arrowsmith, which are now called the Greater Group, and they were doing more interior retail design fit out. And I reflect on this a lot because I kind of had two, like a V in the road, and I had two kind of paths I was going to travel down. And I knew that at the time. One was going to take me much more down an interior route, and the other one was going to be a hardcore product. And yeah, I still think about that quite a lot. And I chose the interior route at that time based on the workspace. The interior firm I turned up to, they just seemed that they were joking around, like quite a fun place to work. They were all playing cricket when I turned up, and the other place was much more serious, kind of design studio. And I chose the place that seemed more fun. Now I don't know if that was the right decision or the wrong decision, but that's just the decision I made. It was pretty much based on that. The pay was pretty similar. I was probably at that time more interested in product design, like hardcore, like industrial design. So maybe perhaps it was a bit of a strange decision, but I don't regret it. I made lifelong friends that I still, like my best friends are still from that initial first job that I went into. So then I started working in interior retail design, and I got some great opportunities in that firm. We were, it was a pretty loose run firm, to say the least, but they were doing some of the, leading retail design in Australia. We were working with, at the time, telecommunication was huge back in the olden days. Retail was really dominated in the sector that we were working in by telcos because they had all the money. It wasn't as fashion-centric retail design back then as it is now. So we were working for Telstra, and then I was got to do some work internationally in China with Kodak at the time, probably at the end of their reign. And so I worked there for 3 years, and then I kind of decided to move on and do some things by myself. So I kind of set up a sole trader, and I did some consulting still for that firm, and then I started consulting for other firms as well. And then I developed a few different relationships with other interior designers. Obviously, I had some good interior skills from that first role, and I started consulting once again for a company called Gardam, and I think that's where me and Will kind of crossed. Well, we didn't quite cross paths, but that's where we kind of have some mutual friends. So I think I consulted for Gardam for a couple of years, and Yeah, I never worked full time because I was kind of always on the hop, but I was doing like a 3 day a week thing there. And so yeah, I consulted for a number of different firms there. And I think that's that 2015 presentation. That was kind of the work where I was at after, you know, that would have been 3 years in my first job and then a couple of years consulting. So do you mind pulling that up, Willem? I'll just quickly flick through that. So very different to what I do now. This was for Diadem. You know, we were just doing really quick concepts. Diadem liked me because I was in there a couple of days a week and I could just generate pretty pictures really quickly, which are relatively functional. I was consulting for GHB as well, which is an architectural firm. Did some work with a few different architects, which was a really good experience. It's a freelance project, a cafe, and then I did some consulting back again for the original firm that I was doing. This was with Diadem. So once again, doing some contract work for Diadem. Really interesting, all really interesting projects. You know, I got a great understanding of interior design from the initial company I worked with, and then a different level of rigor from Diadem with, you know, from a how do you really put something together on a micro level? So that was quite interesting. I then moved overseas for 2 years, and strangely, I started consulting as well. In well, me and my partner were traveling around Eastern Europe, and I got a call from a friend. The retail company I worked for in Australia, my first job, a couple of the people from that company had moved to London, and there was a sister business that had been, you know, been set up there, and they'd been kicking along for quite some time. And they gave me a call, I think when we were in Serbia, and they offered me a job. They had a short-term role for it was a position in Russia. So they were doing, this company was still selling retail design, but they were selling it all around the world. Not so well. We did work in London, but it was really big in places like Turkey, Russia, other European countries. They were really keen to get London designers, London design skills. I really wanted to get. This is funny again. I really wanted to get to Russia because I really wanted to go on holiday there. Not on holiday, I just wanted to experience Russia. Obviously, things were a little bit different then compared to now. And we hadn't figured out our visas. So as part of getting me to do this role, they said they'd fly me to London for a few months. I could do this project. I could present it in Russia, and then they'd leave me there and I'd work out on my visas. So that was, we were burnt out from traveling, so that was really kind of exciting. So we did that project. It was for the third biggest telco in Russia, which was a huge company. Put the concept together, traveled over, presented it, and continued on my travels. And then we located in London for 2 years, and I consulted for that firm while I was there in a similar way. So I had a sole trader. I was working for them for a few days a week. I found another company, like a smaller version of Diadem, strangely enough, in Dalston, and did some interesting work with them in branded environments as well. So I was consulting for those guys. I kind of can't figure out how I had the time to do these things, but somehow I was consulting for the retail company. I was doing a couple of weeks for the other branded environment company. And then I hired a desk space in Shoreditch, and I started doing a couple of my own interior projects from there. And that was in with another interior company. I was just kind of hot desking in a studio in Shoreditch. So it was quite busy times. I got to work on some great projects. Got great international travel. We did a lot of work in Turkey Istanbul's one of my favourite cities, so I got to travel backwards and forwards from there, which was great. We were doing Turkcell, which is Telstra in once again in Turkey. They got like 1,000 sites. So once again, much more retail focused. And then me and my partner decided we wanted to go home. We kind of wanted to change our lifestyle. Like it's pretty, can be quite messy in the UK. Not super healthy. So we decided we wanted to come home, and my partner was really supportive in kind of encouraging me to, go home and properly start my own business. So that's what I did in 2007. And I started my business, and I know I've seen there's this great little Venn diagram of how to start a new business, and it's got a line that goes off and then all these squiggles that go in every direction, and then people figure out what they want to do. And that was exactly like me. I started my business, and it was called Space Left at the start. And maybe if you pull up that last one, can take you through some of the products. So in the first 3 years, I tried to develop a couple of products each year. This is a couple of years into it. And each of the products, that was my first commercial piece I did for Tate, which was this is kind of the more newer piece. I must have just done that in 2009. So it was like my first commercial piece of furniture. Prior to that, I was really just doing experimentation. Like this was a piece talking about packaging, the packaging, it came in a packaging foam material, and you actually popped the light bit out, and that became, the light actually was the packaging. That next stool was an investigation in polypropylene and how to make a kind of integral hinge and use the properties of the plastic to bend and kind of form this stool product, which is kind of like a flat packed screw together product. Also about, sheet maximization, as was this was like a ply table, just utilizing 2 sheets of plywood to make a table. These little legs were cut from the underside and stacked. So I was really interested in material use and material maximization, single process. So yeah, that's what was really interesting to me in those first pieces, and they were really interesting pieces to work on. This is a bit left field, this piece. This is called Squash Me. It's a lounge chair with squash balls in it that added some kind of comfort as you sit into it. So these pieces I developed and exhibited different design shows like Fringe Furniture, and InDesign had a program called Launchpad. So I was producing these products. Obviously they weren't selling in huge volumes, and I was producing these products and entering them in competitions, and I was funding that by doing more interior work, similar interior work that I'd done in the past. But I was starting to kind of investigate this industry, which was its own little niche industry of furniture and lighting, which is what I forgot to say. I was intent on coming back to Australia and starting a business in furniture and lighting and moving away from interior design. This is another product called Flatjack, and that material just came on the market. It's like export, you've probably seen it, old hat. But at the time it just came on the market. No one had really seen it, and we created this bookcase, which was all about what was the maximum storage space I could create out of one sheet of material, and we ended up using 97% of the product, the board. You could use the product and then it could be recycled at the end. So all of those initial pieces were just experimenting and playing, and I learned a lot from them. I learned that you can't just come up with an idea and make it happen, and well, I couldn't do that, so I couldn't just come up with an idea of something that looked nice, make it happen, because it would just fall down in the market in some kind of way once it got out there. Like I found, unless I worked to that brief method that I still work to now, and actually articulated what price point it needed to be, how was it going to transport, what box was it going to go in. All those things needed to come together. Because if one of them does not work, then the product will not be successful. So that's what I learned, as well as understanding like some of the design principles, but I still like to work to today. I really learned that all of those things need to be hit. And I think that takes you, yeah, from there, I did that first table for Tate, and then started, you know, on that kind of more being able to produce a finished product from that, and continue to develop the collections that you saw in their initial presentation. So yeah, it was a bit all over the shop, but if anyone's got any questions about my journey of to get where I was, it's kind of it's interesting to talk about and reminisce.